You are listening to Young Black Equestrians, the podcast, with your hosts, Aubriana Johnson and Caitlin Gooch. I want to start off every episode with something, going on in your life or something that you are just thankful for at this moment. So if everybody wants to share, we can do that. Everybody game for that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I can go first. I'm sure you've seen on Facebook, one of my little books was published yesterday on Amazon. So I'm so thankful for that opportunity and the ability to share stories with the world, pretty much.
Excellent. And that's another topic I'd like to talk to you about sometime. So.
Oh yeah, cool. Definitely.
The publishing part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So what are you thankful for?
Which one of us, me?
Or yeah, Jill.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, a really tough last year. Right before, November of last year, I lost my job. And then my mom ended up in the hospital for a month, and that's why I'm tired, is because of caregivers and not getting sleep. But she's getting better, and I'm going to start working again. And I also have a product I invented that I had been selling when the recession hit. And so, the recession hit and I had to go out of business, but it got licensed. And so it's about to be redistributed.
All right, Caitlin, what are you thankful for?
I am thankful that right now I'm feeling a lot better than I was earlier. I've been having some stomach issues and haven't been feeling too well, but in this moment I feel fine. So I'm very thankful for that.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're feeling better. Jill, if you want to just start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, your current horse, if you have one, and the discipline that you enjoy.
Yeah, I'm in Centerville, Ohio, and the other thing that's thankful about this whole thing is throughout this whole time I've been able to keep all 4 of my horses. I have 3 at home. 2 Tennessee walking horses and 1 saddlebred, and then I have a saddlebred in training in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And discipline is saddle seat, obviously. Well, not obviously, but saddle seat. Although I've shown my walking horses dressage also.
Oh, interesting.
Saddle seat, yes.
That's pretty cool. How did you get into horses?
That's an interesting story. I had, as a kid, went to camp and was put on a horse my dad played pro basketball, and I was put on a horse for publicity shots at camp and got bucked off. But they made me get back on because they needed the photos. So they wiped my tears and put me back on the horse, pictures for the newspaper. I started reading books about horses, and like every horse and I was convinced that, I was going to get a Morgan. And after years of asking my parents for horses for every birthday and every Christmas and not getting one, when I was in medical school, I had ulcerative colitis and decided that I got really sick and had emergency surgery and realized that life is too short.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started riding in medical school. Just kind of, I would say catch riding. I looked in a classified ad while I was in Vermont and literally ended up in a pasture on a 3-year-old Greenbrook thoroughbred just to ride.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Right. It doesn't need to be bucked off again, just to remember what it was like.
Yeah. And ended up transferring medical schools to Ohio State. And ironically, one of the associate deans had a farm where she bred and had horses and had a trainer. And I started going out to her barn, and it was a saddlebred barn. And would refuse to ride the lesson horse because I didn't want to have to beat something to go forward. And Jules he was 30 years old. He didn't have any get up and go.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. So because she thought my father was going to buy me one of her horses, she let me ride one of her young horses. And my first year I got bucked off 7 times. Because she was a bucker.
Yeah.
And so I didn't care. I just and I was 32 when I started riding for real.
That's awesome. So did your dad end up buying you one of her horses?
No. I ended up buying me. I worked, I was in grad school. I had transferred from medical school to grad school. And I worked everywhere I could to earn money to buy a horse. And the first horse I bought was sent to the barn, and I ended up on the ground with him. It was my fault, but once. And his name was Sweet Virginia Breeze. And I had him the first year, and he had some hoof issues the first year. Second year, I was showing up at River Ridge, and I'd been riding for not very long, and we were in the warm-up ring at Ohio State Fair grounds, and Breeze he would rear and whirl and everything he could in the jump, leap, whatever. And they would just throw me in the ring. And the guy who had sold him to me, he was next to my trainer when I went in the ring. He goes, "Oh my goodness!" He said, "We couldn't get him in the ring," and it was his wife, who was his assistant trainer, had been riding him, and they couldn't get him in the show ring. So he would go in fine, but as soon as they closed the gate, he would either run backwards, take off, stop dead. It didn't matter. There was some way that Breeze was not going to make it through the class. And so I ended up with switching horses, trading, and getting a horse that I had for a long time.
Oh, well, that's nice. Did he sell him to you, understanding that you wanted him to show?
I was told he was a 10 and under walk trot horse.
Yeah, he'll walk and trot somewhere, but not in the ring.
He did do those gates, but he had several other tricks up his sleeve.
Well, I'm sure that made you a much better rider.
Well, Fergie, who used to buck me off, made me fearless. So, yeah. And it was funny because I thought it was me, because I was inexperienced. So I thought the problems I had were just me. And then when I found out they couldn't get him in the ring, it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you improved. You at least got in there.
That was my introduction to horses.
Jill, how long did you do saddle seat?
That's all I've done, basically. While I was doing saddle seat, because I don't know if you know anything about saddlebreds.
I don't.
But they are bred to be high energy. They're so much fun to ride, but because all their energy is upwards. I used to go and ride. A friend of mine, when I was in grad school, would come to my barn and we'd ride. And then I'd go to her. He was an eventer. And there was a trainer at her barn he was probably had to be like 80 years old. And he would, "Oh, you ride those shaky tails. You can ride something. What do you want to ride?" He put me on green horses to ride and thoroughbreds and whatever was in the barn that he wanted worked instead of him having to work it. And so that's kind of, I worked a friend of mine's Western Pleasure horse when I lived in Minnesota. So I basically have ridden anything possible. I've ridden Percherons, I've ridden, quarter horses. I had a quarter horse for a little bit. I hate Western saddles, but, the whole time I've been, saddle seat is my preference.
So what exactly is saddle seat? What exactly does that discipline entail?
It's a type of saddle. It's a cutback saddle, and it's a flat saddle, no leg rolls, nothing. Your standard iron stirrups, but it's very flat. relative to other saddles. And you sit in it more like a chair than on your pelvis, per se.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually, usually horses like Arabians are often shown saddle seat, Morgans are often shown saddle seat, and then Saddlebreds are shown saddle seat. And the type of saddle is called a cutback saddle.
Oh, okay. I remember kind of looking for one like that for my walking horse, just because someone recommended it, like cutback saddle pads or a cutback saddle if I wanted to try like a more English saddle.
Yes.
But I didn't know that was kind of primarily for that discipline.
Yeah, it's for mostly show horses, that an English show horse, pretty much. And yes, the cutback that you would have used for a walking horse would have been saddle seat.
That is pretty cool. So you talked about going into the show ring. What was your experience kind of in the show ring, like the scope of everything you've done?
Yeah, I started showing pretty much almost immediately, and I've shown all over the country, saddlebreds, and then walking horses in Tennessee and in Arizona, and actually in the Midwest too. I've shown padded. Both my walking horses were at one point padded, and then I showed them flat shod in standard rail classes, and I've shown them gaited dressage, and showed saddlebreds all over the country because with my job I moved around a lot, and so I've been, shown saddlebreds all over. For showing with show horses, people think it's pretty boring because we just go around in a circle, but a lot of it is riding the horse so that it's kind of, especially with saddlebreds, so that they're on that edge without going over. So, you want them to be very animated and energetic and bright. Same with, with walking horses too, showing. You want them to be kind of at their top peak. Right. Without kind of going over. So sometimes it's harder, when you go in a show ring on a horse, that you're, I had my second horse, I call him my first horse, which was, Breeze being the first one, which was impossible to show, but versus Jack, who he had been a three-gaited equitation horse. And so, with the roached mane and everything, and he didn't flat walk, which is kind of the shows how energetic they are. And he was very high energy. He loved to show. And so every time we'd have to be either the first one or the last one in the ring. Yeah. Because he did not wait for other to go in. He just plowed through them. So if we went in first, that was, fine because we didn't have anyone in front of us. If he was last, the trainer, and then when everybody was in, we'd turn around and go in, and he would, at the gate, just basically sit down on his back end and like go, like, and leap forward.
And I'm ready to go.
Here I am.
Yeah.
So, he is fun. And then, go ahead.
I was just saying, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. And my stallion, walking horse stallion, when he was padded, I ended up with him in a weird way, but he was one of those horses that like other people couldn't show. And he was the same way, where the first time I showed him, he would stand, walking horses, the padded walking horses, they go in the ring and they stop to wait until everyone else is in the ring. That way they're not being judged while other horses are coming in the ring. And the whole time PJ was standing at the rail, just, prancing up, front legs going up and down and up and down and up and down. And the only thought I had, because this was like, I didn't know a lot about showing walking horses, and this was the only thought that went through my head was, oh my goodness, one of us has to be in control, and I guess it's not going to be him. So
yeah.
So he loves, and he still is like that. He's 19 now. He still loves to show.
Oh, that's cool. So as a minority on two accounts, being a woman and being, a non-white show person.
Yes.
What challenges have you, if any, faced? I mean, traveling across the country, you meet a ton of different people.
Yeah.
Have there been any challenges that you've faced kind of in that industry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there have been good things. One of the things when I first started showing, I was showing in Ohio. I was in grad school at Ohio State. And at the time, there were several Black trainers, saddlebred trainers, and they were always at the rail for me. Mm-hmm. And when I came out of the ring, they'd give me advice, and they weren't my trainer, but they were always there for me, and they on the rail, and it was wonderful. Around, different Minnesota, nothing, I didn't have problems in Minnesota. And then when I moved to Tennessee, it was funny because it wasn't so much that, there were some kind of funny things where, one day I was in the barn and our barn was in rural Tennessee. And I was in there one day waiting for my trainer to get back from lunch, and some, older gentleman came in, and he asked me if I knew where my trainer's dad was, and I said, no, I'm just waiting for Shay to get back so I can ride my horse. And he said, you have a horse? I'm like, yeah. Let me see it. It was kind of this, how can you possibly have a horse? And, what kind of dog of a horse do you have? So that was like really the first time I ever experienced anything kind of racist, shall I say. And it wasn't so much malicious as much as just an expectation. Mm-hmm. When and then showing, the area, when you're showing in Tennessee and you're showing walking horses, I was the only female that showed in a lot of my classes, and I was certainly the only Black female that showed in the circuit that I was showing in. So, I was never expected to win, but PJ was such a nice horse that I won a lot, but they would make us work, we'd have to work for it. And so there were classes where I'd come out of the ring and it's like, you were not supposed to win that class because they just had us going for so long, hoping that PJ would mess up. Mm. But it was actually the environment was really a warm, environment because they were there for the horse.
Right.
And so, strangers, would come up to me and congratulate me. And PJ was such a nice padded 15-2 and under horse that people would, come to the ring to watch him show. So it was really nice from that perspective. And then when I moved to Wisconsin and I took his pads off, I was in a barn where it was actually very horrible. The people were rude to me. I literally had a woman come up to me, and I was standing PJ was in the cross ties, excuse me, and she came in with her friend, introduced her friend to my horse.
And completely ignored you.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, it was really weird, but it was just this, they were just rude and mean to me. And I think, part of it was because I had, at the time I had 3 horses. And, again, it comes down to expectations because they could barely afford the ones they had. Mm-hmm. I had, with the flat shod walking horses, I would probably say was the worst group of people. I was at a nationals one year, and these people, I was still with the same barn because they were the only barn in Wisconsin that was, competing. And they, everyone, I didn't talk to them. I got, once we were in Wilmington, Ohio, we were driving back, and I got yelled at for talking to other people. I'm like, you guys don't talk to me. Why wouldn't I? Right. We stay within our barn. I'm like, well, I don't.
Right.
And then one year at nationals, it was, PJ was quote unquote lame. And so I wasn't showing, and they left me at the hotel.
Wow.
And yeah, there was just they were just really rude. And then in the show ring, we were at Murfreesboro at nationals, and I went through my class, and the only thing that was out of the ordinary, PJ was really good, except for we were coming around a corner, and everybody in that corner stood up and cheered, and PJ jumped off the rail and went right back to the rail afterwards. He just kind of spooked, and I put him back on the rail. I got in the lineup, and the ringmaster to me, and she's kind of glaring at me, and she said, "You need to excuse yourself." And I'm like, why? And my trainer's daughter was sitting next to me, and I'm like looking at her too, and it's like, what? And she goes, you need to excuse yourself. Your horse's tongue is over the bit and it's very dangerous. And I'm like, he's just standing here.
Right.
And she's, you need to excuse yourself. And eventually it's just, she would not leave me alone. So, I went to I excused myself, got to the gate, and my trainer says, what's the problem? And I said, she says, PJ's tongue is over the bit. And she checked, it was not, and she just started cussing because she knew that there was something else that was going on.
Yeah.
So that was, one of and really that group of people were the worst group of people from that perspective. And then recently, when I was in Arizona, again, it was I have 3 horses and you're struggling to pay for yours. I got asked to leave a barn and told that I was not appropriate to have around kids because I swore at the trainer for not blanketing my horse when it was 30 degrees in Arizona. And every other horse in the barn was blanketed. I used to come in and blanket horses for them because I live close, and they just didn't blanket my horses. And there were some mothers that were struggling to take, their kids and horses and stuff, and they wanted me gone. Yeah. So they kind of did that whole,
ganging up on.
And then a barn up here, it was a similar kind of situation where I had more horses. And the people, it was mostly the people that worked there. It's like, supposedly she has a horse in Kentucky and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I bet her horse, dogs and blah, 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 blah. And then when I moved them there, they were even angrier because, they weren't, $200 horses. And, the fact that I could ride and that I had more saddles and all this stuff. And, it was just, I'm like, I'm a senior level. What would you expect? You guys are lesson instructors and grooms.
Right. Yeah.
So, I found gum in my helmet. They were constantly sabotaging my stuff. When I left there, I had my blankets hanging on the stalls because it had warmed up a little. When I got them home, the leg straps on the blankets were cut.
That is so trifling.
It's just wrong.
In those situations, did anybody ever stick up for you?
No.
Like, did anybody who knew what was going on, did they ever call other people out or hold them accountable to what they were doing and saying?
No. And not even like the woman who, the farm in Arizona, the woman who owned, who was a trainer, she had cancer. She was in the hospital. She had gotten another trainer in there to take her place while she was, covering. And she's the one who put the call in that, I needed to leave. And then they changed the locks with my stuff in the pack room.
Oh my God.
So that I couldn't get in the tack room. And I'm like, you know what? I've got 2 weeks to be here. You don't want me around your kids. Guess what? That's the only option I have. Is because the only time I can come here is when you are here with the kids. Because that was the only, so I'm like, so guess what? That's what's happening. And then when the woman found out just how nasty these kids and these people were, she never apologized. She just the next time I saw her, she was hugging me, and I'm like, whatever. And then the trainer who kicked me out at a banquet was like, oh, hi, Jill, we missed you. How are you? I'm like, yeah.
Oh my God. So fake.
Yeah, and then the trainer here, when I told him about the gun helmet, he asked one of the guys that worked for him if if it was intentional, and he's the guy who worked for him said, yeah, it was pretty obvious that it was intentional. And he's the one when I told him about it, instead of saying, that's not acceptable, we should have a barn meeting and talk about how to treat people, you should probably move your horses.
Wow.
Right. And when I still see them at shows, and when I see them at shows, this is funny because the lesson instructor and her little minions, they glare at me. And there's a couple of people from that barn that still talk to me, and they're friendly, and a couple of the kids. But, you know, it was kind of this, they kind of talked to me sheepishly, like they're not supposed to, but they do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the trainer, he just kind of like, hi. But his wife is usually pretty friendly.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's out there.
That is amazing. Well, I mean, it's amazing, and it's disappointing because we like to think that, you know, all of us were in it for the horses and for the experience. And, you know, I know when I show, I'm not trying to really be better than other people. You know, I'm trying to show as best for myself, you know.
Yeah. I'm always appreciative of how other people do and everything, you know, and that's the thing. You know what, it's funny because I look at, you know, I belong to some saddlebred groups, and, you know, the other thing, and it's, you know, we know we have a president that is who he is, and, you know, you know, within the saddlebred industry, I've seen a lot of racist stuff. Mm-hmm. That, you know, I was kind of oblivious to certain people being racist, but then you see racist stuff, and it's pretty blatant racist stuff. You know, I have this.
I think it's funny.
Well, or they really believe this stuff. You know, and it's funny because there was one post I was commenting on about a statue of a general in the Civil War, Confederacy, Confederate general. He also founded the Saddlebred Association. Mm-hmm. And he's not in uniform, but the plaque, there's two plaques. One's about his saddlebred stuff, and the other one's about his Civil War honors and everything. And people were discussing it. And, you know, my thing is, you know, fine, you know, take the Civil War plaque down and leave the saddlebred plaque up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a problem with the statue. I have a problem with honoring him as a Civil War general in the Confederacy. They lost. And, you know, it was interesting because some woman got on and, you know, she started commenting and kind of attacking me. And she was proud of her Southern heritage. I'm like, why? But, you know, where other people were commenting, and saying things, and like really some were, because I kind of try to stay above the fray and be really polite, even when people are being stupid. So yeah. I was, you know, just using facts, and other people were like verbally abusing her, and she ignored all of them and was just going after me.
Yeah.
It's just like
a target.
And so, you know, you see that, you know, it's that kind of stuff. You see that, and it's just this, you know, I don't know what people expect, but you know, that. It was interesting, you know, like I said, with showing walking horses, yeah, I might have been the only Black female in the ring, but people were out there watching my horse.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, the way it should be. Mm-hmm. But I think that, you know, a lot of these people, you know, it's been such a tight-knit, closed society to some extent, where if there were Black people showing, they were trainers and grooms and, you know, taking care of their horses, that they kind of have this expectation that we're not equals and we don't really belong. And it doesn't matter that, you know, I have the job to pay for it. They don't take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Like you're undeserving.
Yeah. And they don't it's like, how do you as a groom not calculate the fact that I make than you, a lot more money than you. I'm an engineer, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's common sense, but they don't get past that.
Yeah.
Their expectation based on race. And then there's a resentment for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh my goodness. That's a whole nother episode. We'll have to have you back for a part 2. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit to some happy things. So how has having horses and riding, how has that improved your life?
It's I don't have to go to a psychiatrist. It's that simple. You know, riding is very, you know, segregated kind of, and we are definitely the minority. Well, I'm a female, African American female biomedical engineer working in the medical device industry, which is very white male dominated. It makes it very stressful. I was, after I lost this last job, I got fired, and after, and it was because of, discrimination and hostility and stuff like that, because God forbid I might know things they don't know. And, so my job in itself is a function of just stress. It's just stressful. And, I looked at the stats after I lost this job, and the majority of minorities and women leave the profession completely, the discipline completely, because of hostile work environments, discrimination, etc. Yeah. So I made it. I'm still doing it. But riding is my psychiatrist. It's just like, and I've met some great people, and I have friends, most of my friends are horse people, so.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. So do you have like a particular vision for the future as far as kind of showing your horses, or what else you want to do with them? Any goals that you have for them?
So, yeah, I have, as I said earlier, the horses that I've got, most of them are horses that people did not want. For whatever reason. And I have a horse that it took me over a year to get. He had been auctioned off at the Saddlebred auction in the fall. Mm-hmm. I bid on him. He got bought by the Amish. I bid against a woman in the parking lot to get him from the Amish, and she ended up outbidding me. And I had told the woman bidding for me, I said, if she doesn't want him, have her contact me. She, less than a year, was trying to get rid of him. So she contacted me. We tried to work out a deal. She didn't take it. And then I saw him in the sale book. And so I bid on him a second time, ended up with him. When I had him transported and I could tell he had issues. When I had him hauled to Arizona, my trainer, she was terrified of him. So I sent him to a trainer in California who was doing pretty well with them, moved him to Texas, and his girlfriend was terrified of him riding her. So then he became terrified of him.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So I had him moved up to Kentucky, and the trainer I have him with is doing great with him. He was supposed to show at Louisville this year, but because of my not having a job and everything, made it kind of hard. So the goal is for him to show there next year, and for me to be showing him next year. I've been riding him, but no one thought that I would be able to ride him, just because if trainers are terrified of him, why would they think that I could ride him? Right. But I've been riding him, and so the goal is to show him, for me to show him, and then also for him to show at Louisville.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's absolutely beautiful. So
you have to tell us, how did you come up with the magician curry wash? Because when I saw that, I was just like, that is something that I need in my life.
Okay, so I have, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you've heard the barking, but Cody's my third Norwegian elk hound. And Norwegian elk hounds are double-coated dogs.
Yeah, they are. They're super fluffy.
Yeah. So the one that I had before Charlie, because I've worked and traveled and stuff, I've when I go on a trip, I put them in a kennel, they bathe them, and so I have clean dogs all the time. Well, Charlie, I moved out to the country in Tennessee, and farm dogs get dirty, get very dirty. And I had never had to bathe them before. And so the first time I tried to bathe Charlie was a disaster, and I was soaking wet. He was not clean completely because he was like running from the hose. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get his belly. And, it's like you try to wet them down, and elk hounds, if you try to wet them down and then they shake, they're not wet anymore.
Right.
Because that undercoat, you have to get that wet, and they shake, and the water's gone.
It was in this moment that our audio cut off. So stay tuned for part 2, where we talk about advice for late bloomers in the horse industry.
But yeah, well, congratulations on your licensing. You know, it'll be cool to learn a little bit about that whole process because you know everybody's kind of into the entrepreneurship game, including myself. So it would be interesting to learn kind of how that comes about from you know designing a product or coming up with this idea, you know,
Mhm.
designing and then kind of getting into manufacturing and production. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's, I mean, for me, it's just kind of what I do for a living, so it makes it really easy. But it is, that's why I love what I do.
So, what advice do you have for those late bloomers, those people who you know always wanted to ride a horse as a kid, just you know still have that passion for it, you know, whether the kids just left the house, empty nesters, or anybody who is, you know, not growing up in this environment like me and Caitlin have.
Right. I think a lot of it is, it's there are people who have a passion for it, and then there are people who just don't care. And if you have the passion for it, you're gonna really, it's never gonna go away. And so it's finding a good barn, talk to people. I try to tell people that try different disciplines, because people end up in the discipline that's easiest for them to get to a lot of the time.
Right.
So, I rode saddle seat because I had an associate dean that had a saddlebred barn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I rode other disciplines. I will always go back to saddlebreds. I love my walking horses, but I love saddlebreds. And it's because of my personality and everything else associated with saddlebreds and me. I've shown dressage. I've shown a lot of different things, and it's just try different things to find out where you are most comfortable and what your passion is.
That's awesome.
And definitely work with someone. People, I always get nervous. My college boyfriend, he said, yeah, he was gonna retire soon and buy a ranch in Arizona and get horses. I'm like, I wouldn't start there,
Right.
because it's a big investment. It's a lot of work and a lot of discipline for you and the horses. I see so many people get into it not knowing what to expect and not knowing what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how old you are. Work with, take some lessons at a dressage barn, take some lessons at a jumping barn or hunter barn, take some lessons, at a barn that does Western pleasure, take some lessons at, and just kind of feel out the different areas and find out where you're comfortable.
I think that is solid advice.
There's the only other thing, because one of the things that I've noticed too, when you do that, a lot of barns are catering more to kids. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's this mom, soccer mom, horse mom, mean girl stuff. And my whole thing is just don't let other people dictate your passion. Find the right environment for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, I was in a barn down the street. It was a lesson factory, and there were all these mothers, and it was just, it's not the same as like my barn in Kentucky. And it's got kids and adults, but it's a smaller barn. And it's very family oriented, and everyone's very supportive of each other. And so, you might end up a barn. Don't let that dictate, whether you do it or not. Find the right environment if it's really your passion.
Right. Or when they're faced with any kind of challenge or adversity or, you know, anything difficult when they're just trying to get into something, they go,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically say, "Oh, this must not be for me." You know, I didn't know it
Right.
was going to be like this, but you know, if you do have to put your foot in different waters just to see kind of what fits for you.
Yeah. So whether it's a discipline, and even within a discipline, a barn, because different barns have different environments.
Yeah, and different trainers, you know.
Yep.
Some people
Yeah.
are I mean, that's like with professors or with teachers, like some people are able to explain things better than others, and some trainers are only used to working with people who already have some kind of idea of how to ride, so you just.
The funny story about that, I had a trainer in Minnesota, and bless his heart, it was funny. His communication skills were special. And but he was a great trainer, and it was, for me, every trainer I've had has been one of those who, yells, blah, 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 blah. And I prefer that because I want to correct whatever I'm doing wrong right away. I don't want you, that's good, raise your hand up a half an inch, that's good, that drives me up a wall.
Yeah.
I want to, do this, bump them back, do this, but, whatever, and so, there were women who, like, they never want to take a lesson from Tom. It's like, I'm not paying to be talked to like that. I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything from Carrie, his wife, because she was, one of those, that's good.
You're paying for results.
Right, exactly. And so I started riding with Tom and got a lot better. And Tom was tough. He had me, there was one horse that we had in the barn that, to canter him, if you were too stiff, you were riding a pogo stick. If you were too relaxed in the saddle, he would drop out of the canter. And so you had to find his sweet spot. And I had a lesson where for a half an hour, he had me cantering this horse in circles and then reversing and cantering in circles, like for 30 minutes, cantering in circles. And he was yelling at me the whole time. And then when I got off, he said, great job. I've never seen anyone ride that horse that well. And that's what I want, And then there are people who want to carry. And so it's finding the people that fit for you is important.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I know Lillian's going to be like, finally.
She loves PJ. I don't know if she's told you about PJ, my stallion.
Yeah. So Lillian was that person to me when I showed Maestro as a 2-year-old, because I just wanted to, we were just going out there to not die. Like, I wasn't expecting anything really. He had only been ridden for like a month. So State Fair just happened to come around. So we decided to go to State Fair. But after that, she's like, oh my gosh, you have got to follow this lady. Da, 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 da. She's got a stallion walking horse, da, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And guess what? She's black. And I was like, okay, well, I'm here for everybody black. So I guess I'll add her as a Facebook friend.
Yeah, she was at one of the shows where these people were so to me that, like, and I was certainly not supposed to be talking to her. I got yelled at on the way back from Ohio to Wisconsin. I got yelled at who I talked to, and I can't talk to this person. And it was funny because after the show, Lillian went out with my cousin and I had a dinner. It's like, yeah, I'm not supposed to talk to her, but guess what? He's a lot nicer than you people. So, but she loves PJ. She's like, he's a rock star. That's a rock star. And PJ thinks he is. He's beautiful, and he thinks he's.
He knows it.
He knows it. And he's so funny because he's really short. He's, I showed him 15.2 and under, padded, but people think that he's big because of the way he carries himself. So. So yeah, she just tell her I said hi and give her a hug for me.
Thank you for listening to Young Black Equestrians, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for updates. Listen, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. See you next time.